Well, the obvious big question, but I have to ask it anyway, is who is Banksy?
I really shouldn't tell you who Banksy is, but they are.
Hi, Lindsay.
Hi, Moby.
Hi, Bagel. So we got a lot to talk about.
There's a lot to go over.
First and foremost, and I know that podcasting is predominantly an audio platform / format, but Bagel is wearing a little octopus costume, and it's the funniest thing I've ever seen.
It's so funny. It's really, really hard to think about anything else when she's wearing it,
and
which is great.
And it's not exploitative because it's not necessarily attached to her.
It's just kind of resting atop her head.
Yeah, so it's like a blanket that just looks like an octopus. And
it's just really, really, but it's like,
Bagel, hi.
I can't tell if it's an alien or an octopus.
I mean,
It does have some cartoonish eyes.
Yeah, so it's an alien octopus. Octopi might be aliens. Mm-hmm. So in any case, I'll try to focus on the matter at hand.
Your eyes are watering. It's really, really, I can tell that you're really battling to find words through and suppress laughter. And that's a fun thing to witness.
So in addition to alien octopus Bagel, our guest today, an old dear friend of mine.
And a bit of an icon.
Very much an icon. And also one of the sharpest people I've ever met. So it's Shepard Fairey is our guest today. You might know Shepard from the fact that he has been dominating public discourse and the zeitgeist for a few decades now. But he and I have been friends for a long time, but it was only weirdly at this event in New Mexico where I sort of heard him talk about the sort of like the art history aspect of his work and the philosophical aspects of his work. And I was struck like, wow, Shepard's really smart. As hopefully our listening audience will discover in just a few minutes.
I think he's so special. He's also, since I've known him, has never been anything but kind, gentle, curious, and lovely. He's just a great human being, and he cares so much about politics, about the state of things. He just wants the world to be a better place, and it's reflected in his art and has been for decades, and he's just so persistent and prolific, and I feel really, really lucky that we got to have this conversation with him.
So to that end, let's go talk to Shepard.
Great.
Okay, so Shepard, Lindsay's at a little bit of a disadvantage here because you and I have known each other for quite a long time, and we sort of grew up in the same worlds and the same scenes and sometimes on the same blocks. And so Lindsay has a lot of, we'll call them like foundational questions, right?
Yeah, the way back questions. Because I think that your name is very, very synonymous with your very, very popular work that I think a lot of people are very, very aware of. But I'm very interested in little baby Shepard.
And I'm very interested in little punk rock phenomenologist Shepard. So there's a good chance that the stuff that you and I talk about, no, that's when people will turn off the podcast. So to start, but I came up with some top 5 list ideas.
Okay.
Do you mind if we do some top 5s, or just
you want to do it straight off the top?
Yes.
That's what we're going right into.
But I do not want to volunteer a top 5 so I just want top 5. If you guys would like to deliver your top 5s.
Okay.
Unless I feel moved, but I'm counting myself out for the most part of the top 5s. So I'm just here to listen.
They're old guy top 5s.
Okay, great. So I'm so excited to hear your 2 top 5s.
We had the DJ producer Armin van Buren on the show. Mm-hmm. And on one hand, I wanted to talk to him about mental health and all these things, but I also just wanted to talk with him about old records.
Right.
And so I couldn't stop myself. I kept, like, in the middle of important conversations, I'd be like, yeah, but what about that record and that record? So I apologize.
Like obscure equipment and things of that nature.
That no one cared about except for me. So top 5. Here's my first one. Let me think. How about top 5? We'll start simple. Top 5 punk rock albums. EPs are also included. Going from 5 to 1.
I might have to shuffle the order, but the Misfits' Walk Among Us, I'll go with number 5.
So is that the one that has like We Are 138? That's the second one.
No, Walk Among Us is the first full length, and it starts off with 20 Eyes. It's got Hell Breaks Loose. It's got I Turned Into a Martian.
So which one has like Hollywood Babylon? Was that the first EP?
That's like the first collection, I think. I think Hollywood Babylon was a 7-inch only starting off. But yeah, and Walk Among Us was the first album I got by the Misfits. That was in like 1985.
So number 5,
15.
Misfits, Walk Among Us.
Yep. Number 4, Damaged, Black Flag.
Favorite song on Damaged?
The first 3 songs, Rise Above, Spray Paint the Walls, and Six Pack might be my favorite 3-song sequence of any punk rock album.
I also like Depression is quite good.
Oh yeah, it's amazing. The whole album's great,
except for I don't love TV Party.
No, you're right, because it's TV Party is their jokey song. It's like their Dead Milkmen song. Mm-hmm. But
when I used to see them obsessively in the early 80s, and TV Party was always my bathroom song. Like if I had to pee, I'd be like, so Black Flag were like, it's with Henry Rollins. Well, it started off with Keith Morris and then Des Cadena. I feel like I've already lost everybody who's listening. They're like, why are you talking about punk rock bands from the early 80s? But I would go see them. I still have 2 scars on my head from Black Flag shows.
Because you got hit in the face?
From stage diving, from stuff.
Okay.
I'm actually lucky to be alive because there was one Black Flag show in New Rochelle where I dove off the stage and no one caught me and I landed on my head unsupported. Just like you, because I dove over, there was that lip of people at the front of the stage and you would dive hoping that people would catch you. And somehow no one caught me and I landed from like 7 feet just on my head.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So... But if I had to pee, I would just sort of like, okay, they're going to play TV Party, so that's when I can go to the bathroom and I'm not missing anything. Okay, 5, Misfits Walk Among Us. 4, Black Flag Damaged. 3, that was a drum roll.
The first Bad Brains record, the Roar cassette.
Yep. Not the Rick Ocasek reproduced the entire album for Caroline. It's not nearly
not Rock for Light. No. Yeah. Love the Cars, love Rick Ocasek, but not the production I wanted on that. Too slick.
So special.
Yeah. Number 2, Nevermind the Bollocks. Here's the Sex Pistols.
So can I have a quick aside about Nevermind the Bollocks?
Yeah.
About 20 years had gone by and I hadn't listened to it. And I was staying in a hotel in San Francisco and whoever was like the welcome package involved the Nevermind the Bollocks CD. And I was like, that's interesting. And I listened to it for the first time in 20 years. It was so good. I mean, like, even now, like, if you listen to God Save the Queen and Anarchy in the UK, you're like, of course these started a revolution.
Yeah, they're like perfect songs. I mean, they're melodic, but they're also angry and tough. It's like the sweet spot of so many things that at least connect with me, especially me at 14.
And that the opening line, Lindsay, do you know, not to put you on the spot, the opening line of the song Anarchy in the UK?
No.
So one of the most influential punk rock songs of all time, and it was a #1 record in the UK for about a month. The opening line is I Am the Antichrist. Imagine a pop song, a #1 record today that opens with the line, I am the Antichrist. Yeah. And Antichrist, to be fair, he leaves room for others. But
yeah, and it made Glenn Matlock really mad that John Lydon rhymed Antichrist and Anarchist. Anarchist. Mm-hmm. But great lyricist, John Lydon.
It also, in God Save the Queen, I think we were talking about this at dinner the other night. There's a verse in God Save the Queen that is so poetic. It's we're the flowers in the dustbin.
We're the poison in your human machine.
We're the future, your future. It's like these weirdly like flowers in the dustbin. What a beautiful poetic image.
Yeah,
okay.
Written by a guy who's like 22 years old.
Yeah.
And now is a Trump supporter.
Yeah, who lives in Santa Monica and enjoys fried food.
Yeah.
There's a pipeline for that.
Number 1?
London Calling, The Clash. And, there's so much good Clash stuff. I love the first record, too. The first record's got really great energy, but it feels like they're trying to emulate the formula of the Sex Pistols. By London Calling, I think they decided that punk rock was the free space to do whatever they want. And they were doing reggae. They were doing... They were doing Americana,
their horn sections. There's almost like sometimes sounds like New Orleans soul. Band. Yeah.
And yet it all sounded like them. And so, some people thought that was when they sold out or, weren't punk anymore. But I actually think that, punk is the freedom to do whatever you're moved to do.
I mean, it's, the form versus function.
Right.
And a lot of people got very attached to the form of punk rock, whereas really what made it interesting was the function of punk rock.
Yeah, punk rock was life-changing for me. There's a ton of other records I could have brought up. Of course, the first Ramones record is a really awesome record. There's so many things. But yeah, those are my top 5.
I'm not trying to be all nice and sycophantic, but those would be probably my top 5 right now as well. Okay, I don't want to dwell too much on old guy records. A record that I've recently rediscovered that's actually really good is the second Clash album, Give 'Em Enough Rope.
Yeah.
Because when it came out, it kind of was like a huge disappointment. But it's really good. It's got like Safe European Home, Stay Free.
Yeah.
I think it has Stay Free.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, that's on there. Tommy Gunn.
Yeah.
Produced by Sandy Pearlman, who did all the production for Blue Oyster Cult, which was kind of heresy in punk rock. But I mean, I think it's got really great songs. It's not a top one for me compared to London Calling But yeah, I mean, as far as consistency, I think it's better than Sandinista, even though Sandinista has a lot of songs I love.
It should have just been one record.
Right, exactly.
It's a 3-record set.
Yeah. A bit indulgent, but
So thank you. Speaking of indulging, thank you for indulging my first top 5. Whether we keep this in or not, I don't know, because I'm just wondering, do you think anyone apart from me and Shepard are going to be interested in these top 5s?
Well, I'm sure the people that are really will be.
Well, also it can be like, hey, the B-sides and outtakes of the Moby Pod.
Yeah.
No, this is also just like a little trick, because the next part is the steps to the revolution.
Yeah.
We write at dawn, so we weeded out the people that we don't need to be.
Yeah.
To write at dawn with us.
Okay, so for my notes. Do you want to start at the beginning? South Carolina?
I'm so curious about what it was like growing up for you and how you kind of started developing your artistic style and what kind of art you were doing when you were coming up.
And by any chance, did you know Stephen Colbert growing up?
Stephen Colbert and I went to the same school, but I didn't know him. But an interesting thing, when Colbert had me on his show in early 2009, when the Obama Hope poster was sort of at its peak of popularity, right before Obama's first inauguration. When I went on Colbert's show and he came into the green room to give his little pep talk to all the new guests, which he does, we started talking, and then I said, well, I went to Porter-Gaud also. And he said, oh, I was just talking to my friend Carlos Salinas, who was his year. And I said, Carlos Salinas is the first person I ever saw wear a Sex Pistols shirt.
Wow.
And that's a very interesting connection. And, I heard the Sex Pistols a couple years after that, but the shirt itself stuck in my mind. We had free dress day one day a year at this very conservative private school that Stephen Colbert and I went to.
And also back then, just to contextualize it a bit, this would have been when, like 1982, 83?
Yeah, 82.
If you wore a Sex Pistols shirt Like in Darien High School, it took me weeks to work up the courage to wear a talking head shirt to school.
Why?
Because it was so scary. Like, you would get beaten up for wearing a talking head shirt.
Why? Why were they so mad?
Because they hated punk rock and new wave.
Why?
Like,
who hated?
The jocks, the hippies, everybody. Like,
why did they hate it?
In hindsight, it doesn't make sense. But
if I don't understand it, I'm gonna have to kill it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Like, if you cut your hair short, like, I remember the bass player in the Vatican Commandos junior year got an earring, and we were like, "You're the bravest person I've ever met." Like, no one had ever had an earring. Like, and he would get beaten up and pushed into lockers. But my friend John Farnsworth learned how to silk screen, and so I had an Izod shirt, and we put the Sex Pistols logo on my Izod shirt, and I was like, I am the biggest rebel who's ever existed in the planet because I have an Izod shirt with a Sex Pistols logo on it.
I can't believe you did that.
And my name for the remainder of the year was Sex Pistols. So, like, kids who didn't know me, they'd be like, "Hey, Sex Pistols." Then they'd punch me.
No. Was this your experience as well?
Of course, I got heckled by people from cars, but it wasn't because I'm a little bit younger than Moby. By the time I was into punk rock, I think there was enough of a familiarity with it that it wasn't quite that dangerous. But my dad's friends, I remember my parents' friends, when they saw me skateboarding around and wearing Converse that I'd drawn, like, leopard spots on and things like that, they'd said, like, all right, I hope it stops there. You're not going to start wearing a flower pot on your head, are you?" Referencing Devo. Devo was the only band that sort of cracked the conscience of a lot of the square people in Charleston. So that was the only reference they had. And, Devo was actually pretty poppy and subversive, but definitely a lot more palatable than Black Flag.
Yeah, I remember Devo was also, if you were into punk rock and new wave, that's what they would call you.
Yeah.
Like, "Yo, Devo."
Weird.
Yeah.
So the household I grew up in, very preppy. My mom taught English to my dad through medical school, and then they had a boy and then a girl. We were on the cover of Red Book magazine in 1974 as the All-American Southern Family. In high school, my mom was head cheerleader and my dad was captain of the football team. They made straight A's. They started dating in 10th grade. They got married at 19. So
this is like kind of white picket fence.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Literally, we had a white picket fence in front of our little house that my parents bought for $19,000 that I think just sold for like over $1 million. But the thing was, as a kid, I always had a mischievous streak, and I loved to draw and make stuff with Legos, Lincoln Logs, later like model tanks and airplanes. It's funny, I love war stuff because I'm such a pacifist. But anyway,
but boats are cool regardless.
I was always making stuff. And as I went through Porter Gaud, starting in first grade, I felt a little bit socially out of step, but there was no way for me to articulate
good
that.
minor
really.
Reference, by the way.
Yeah. But
one of their first songs called Out of Step.
Drawing and painting were something that I did, but there was no social value to it at all. It was all about, jocks, being a jock would make you popular, and wearing certain clothes. And my parents were really frugal. So all the cool kids had Levi's and certain kinds of shoes. And my parents bought me Tough Skins. And I said, I got to have Levi's. That's what's cool. And my parents say, if people judge you for your clothes, then they're not real friends. I said, I know, they're not real friends. I need as much help as I can get.
Was it so specific that you needed the Levi's with the red tag?
Yeah, I mean, like I would have been happy to get my hands on any Levi's, even something that wasn't just as obviously Sears bootleg as Tough Skins. I might have been okay with. I might have been okay with Wrangler. I mean, but Tough Skins were the worst. It was just like broadcasting that you're a loser. And but in a way, I'm grateful to my parents now for that, because they made me their withholding that from me made me understand things about how shallow people are socially that were good to know sooner, I think. If I was just finding that out now, it would be
a tragedy.
Okay, life is over.
Yeah.
But then when I was good at soccer, so that sort of helped. But then I got hit by a car and it broke my leg. And I was never as good at traditional sports anymore. And then I really understood what it was like to struggle socially. And so when I discovered skateboarding and punk rock at 14, that was really life-changing for me, because I'd always loved to draw and paint, but I was actually even kind of hiding it. I was like very closeted about how much I love that stuff, because it wasn't, not only was it not cool, it was kind of uncool. But then when I got into skateboarding and punk rock, they both had creativity, like do-it-yourself creativity as part of the culture. So that was really important for me. So I got into making homemade stencils to make t-shirts, to decorate the bottom of my skateboard. My mom had a Xerox machine because she had a business where she needed a Xerox machine in our house. Whoa. And that was awesome, because I could take all my skateboard magazines and my record covers, play with the darkness, brightness, the contrast, and then cut stencils from that stuff. So I started understanding graphic art. So at like age 14, 15.
Just back up 1 second and talk, because you talk about being introduced to punk rock and skate culture. What was the introduction?
I had a friend John Reigart, who later worked at Sound on Sound in New York City, and also at Sear Sound too. But
they're recording studios.
Yeah, and he was the first person to play Nevermind the Bollocks, Here's the Sex Pistols for me. And he also had a friend who was a BMXer, and this was when skateboarders like punk rock and BMXers like metal. And the guy bought the first Suicidal Tendencies record thinking it was going to be metal, and then realized it was punk. But it is kind of metal too.
I mean, so just an aside there, do you know the band Suicidal Tendencies? So their first single, I think it was the first hardcore song to get played on MTV.
Yeah.
Or maybe Kraut were. I think Kraut might have.
I never saw Kraut on MTV, but yeah.
So Suicidal Tendencies institutionalized. And when it came out, my friends and I were like, oh, this is kind of a novelty song. I just went back and re-listened to it. It's really good.
I know.
Like, it's actually kind of magical. And also very weirdly prescient, culturally prescient, because it was like a white lead singer, but the band is all Latino.
Yeah.
Like, it was like super inclusive. And at the time we were just like, oh, this is a goofy song from MTV, but boy, it's so much better than I remembered.
It's kind of every teenager's slightly distorted version of life, that like your parents just don't understand you. And, Mom, get me a Pepsi, just one Pepsi. She wouldn't give it to me.
And weird, and it's also incredibly, for an MTV song, super rebellious, because it's like, I went to your schools, I went to your churches, I went to your institutions, and I'm the one who's crazy.
Yeah. How can you say I'm crazy? Yeah, and it's slower, and then it's got the fast section. It's got all the ingredients.
Yeah. Almost a perfect, fascinating song.
But anyway, that was a big deal for me. But really, the thing that got me, when I went to get my first skateboard, it was because a friend had left his skateboard at my house. And so I just decided I'm going to fool around on it in my driveway. And I was having a lot of fun with it. And a few other friends already had skateboards, so I felt like I was a little late to the game. But I picked it up really quickly, just messing around on my own. So I had my mom get me a skateboard for my birthday, but my parents didn't want me to get one. So they said, well, you have to earn half the money. So they thought, no way is he going to earn half the money. But I mowed lawns and did other chores and earned $60. And when we went to the skate shop, they were opening one of the first skate videos called Skate Visions, and the entire soundtrack was by this band Agent Orange, who are like Orange County surf punk, basically. And so that immediately, that was like the soundtrack to my new life, putting my skateboard together and all that. So there was a really euphoric association with that. And then I was like, okay, let me find more of that. And John gave me those couple of records. And then it was just off to the races. I wanted to get my hands on any punk record I could. And I think part of it was that I knew that it was sort of married to the culture and I wanted to immerse myself in that, but also adrenaline. Skateboarding was all about adrenaline. And so any music that seemed like it was going to be adrenaline inducing, I was really excited about.
So Agent Orange, were they the ones, they did Everything Turns Gray, right?
Yep. And then, Bloodstains. And Living in Darkness.
Who did the cover of The Ventures Pipeline? Was that
That's them too.
That's also them? I thought that was the Vandals, but no, it's Agent Orange. Okay.
Yeah, Agent Orange.
They're great.
Yeah, that first record, Living in Darkness, is an amazing record. It was on Posh Boy.
Okay, so we're at age 14 and 15. Quick recap. You've discovered punk rock through your friend and through skating and through staying home with a broken leg. Your first skateboard, was it a Vision skateboard by any chance? Because my first real skateboard was Vision. That was probably the last skateboard I ever had.
Somehow I can't imagine you skating.
For good reason. I was terrible at it.
My third board was a Vision board.
Okay.
My first board was Sims. My second board was an Alva Christian Asoy. My third board was a Vision Old Ghosts made by a skateboarder who did these stencils of skulls, and he had his own little series within Vision. So the fact that the aesthetics of that board were kind of crude, they were like something that I knew I could maybe do. You know, that was that emboldened me.
Well, that is, I think, one of the most sort of empowering aspects of growing up with DIY culture is the DIY aspect of like being like, oh, like when I was growing up, I was like, I can never learn how to write Stairway to Heaven, but I can learn how to write Teenage Kicks. You know, I like the approachability of like, oh, I can make a flyer, I can make a t-shirt, I can start a band, I can figure out how to release a 7-inch. Like that's so empowering, and so many inspiring people came from that DIY world. You could even say Steve Jobs in earlier days came from that as well. Like, oh, I can make a computer in my bedroom. Like, as opposed to thinking I need to start IBM, just thinking like, oh, just build this in my garage. So yeah, it's lucky that we found that.
Yeah, absolutely. It was life-changing for me. And it also gave me an alternative social ecosystem, which was extremely important because all of a sudden the jocks ruling things at my school, it just didn't faze me at all because I had a different set of friends who were, it was like the clothing brand, the antisocial social club. We were that. And I took a lot of pride in thinking, oh, all these things that those people think are important, I don't think are important. Now, of course, I was shallow in my own ways. I was like, desperately trying very hard to look like I wasn't trying very hard.
With
indie
my culture in the nutshell.
Yeah, like, but it was very, as silly as aspects of it were, it was really crucial to my evolution of feeling like I can define my own destiny. I can, do things for myself.
And then, so from South Carolina, I think, sorry to jump the gun a little bit, I think you moved to beautiful Idyllwild, California.
Across the whole country.
Yeah, so I was doing a bunch of art summer programs, which my parents insisted I do, but I didn't resist much.
Could they see your talent? Could they see your art? And were they very like, yes, go do, this is important?
I think my parents saw that they saw I was into it. And I had a couple of teachers that pulled my parents aside and said, hey, you should really support this in him. He's got some skill. And they didn't tell me that until later, but that's cool that they took that seriously and they wanted to support it. And I switched from the private school, Porter Goud, to a public school for a couple years. And my parents hated that because I had a driver's license. I was running with the, supposed wrong crowd. And they said, you can't go back to that school. You have to go to an art boarding school. And I'd been going to the summer program for the North Carolina School of the Arts for the last couple of years. And I got into the school for my senior year of high school. But during the summer program between my junior and senior year, I spent the night out without permission and got caught, and they kicked me out. And they said, you're not going to go to this school. You can't follow the rules. So then my parents had to find an alternative school. And so we were going to be going to California for a family trip, and through a professional guidance counselor, they found this school in Idyllwild, and it had only been open as a full-time boarding school for 1 year. So I submitted my portfolio while we were on the trip, and I think they would have taken anybody that could pay tuition, but they were like, yeah, you're in. And then that was a really great experience going to that school, because I did academic classes until noon and then art classes until 4:30, and learned how to do graphic design, learned how to do black and white and color photography, learned a lot about contemporary art that I hadn't been exposed to in South Carolina, where, the major aspiration was to get to paint the duck stamp. That would be like, you're boy, you just
you painted a duck stamp.
You've made it. Can I
interrupt for 1 second, which is people listening, because we have a lot of people listening who don't know what Idyllwild, California is. And I need to just explain. I was like, what is this place I've heard about, this fascinating mountain town that's near Palm Springs? And it's one of the most beautiful places in California. It's just completely covered in pine trees. Mm-hmm. But what makes it fascinating is you're on the 10, the ugliest road in the world. You get off the 10, you start heading up, you keep heading up, you keep heading up. Like you drive for 90 minutes, and at some point you hit the tree line. And it's just beautiful, huge pine trees everywhere. And this adorable little village hidden at the top of the mountain. And I guess in the 60s and 70s, lots of like counterculture rock, like Dolly Parton lived there for a while. I think the Moody Blues lived there, but it's tiny. I mean, the population's like 4,000 people.
Right.
So I just wanted to explain, it's one of the most special places. I had a house there for a while, but it was so hard to get to because it's, especially in the winter, like the other weird thing, it's right next to Palm Springs. In the winter, it gets 20 feet of snow. Yeah.
I mean, I lived there for a winter where I'd never experienced snow like that because I'm from South Carolina where it never snows. I mean, you get a few flakes here and there every few years.
And you can take the tram down to Palm Springs where it's 80 degrees and sunny. You take the tram up the mountain and it's 20 feet of snow and freezing.
It seems like a strangely impossible place, but it's also so beautiful. There's magic. Yeah. It's kind of a magical place.
Well, I think what was really ideal about it for me was, a few things, but the isolation probably was quite helpful because I was at a school where, for the first time in my life, the teachers treated me not like a nuisance, but like a peer that they wanted to help evolve. So to see that in a teacher was something I'd never experienced, and people who would have a conversation with me that was genuinely two-way, but they would guide me. And so it completely changed my mind about what teachers were. I thought teachers were like Pink Floyd, another brick in the wall. Mm-hmm. I mean, all my teachers in South Carolina had seemed really unhappy to have to be dealing with children at all. And
they're like surprised. They're like, what are all these children doing here?
Yeah. And at that school, Idyllwild School of Music and the Arts, I was also surrounded by a lot of talented students. My roommate, this guy, Matt Murphy, was incredibly talented. And so he rubbed off on me in that he was very experimental and ambitious and a really great photographer, painter, designer, did fashion stuff. And so it made me want to step up my game. And I put together a portfolio while I was there and got into the Rhode Island School of Design, which I never expected. I also got into the School for Visual Arts, the Chicago Art Institute, Savannah College of Art and Design, everywhere I applied. And I was so used to being a screw up that I was like, what is going on here? But I had actually worked really hard on that portfolio.
And you went to RISD, and RISD, so Lindsay, have you ever been to RISD?
No, but I'm familiar with it.
Oh, it's a very... So I had a girlfriend who went to Brown, and she lived on Thayer Street in Providence, Rhode Island. And we would walk down to RISD and try and blend in because it was so cool. It was just like...
Confirm or deny?
I mean, Brown was nice, but like RISD, because RISD and Brown are like right up against each other, right?
Yeah.
And so like, but RISD was like so... And Tim, we would go to the cafe and be like, do you think they think we go here? Or do we look cool enough to look like we go to RISD?
Well, you know, every school has got, in the 80s, you know, the couple people who are very artsy, listen to the right bands, dress the right way. RISD was those people from those schools exclusively. That was the entire student body, except for sometimes people that were in industrial design or architecture.
But also, it's where Talking Heads started, right?
Yeah. Gus Van Sant went to RISD.
Who lives up the street.
Yeah, a lot of really talented people. So when I got to RISD, it was like the Idyllwild school on steroids. So I was working really hard just to not be embarrassed. But you know, I had a ton of energy when I was younger. I could go to class all day, then go see a punk show or go to out skateboarding, and then start my projects at midnight and stay up until 6 and then sleep for 2 hours and go to class and then just catch up on sleep on the weekends. And I did that for the entirety of my time at RISD. But the thing that was really transformative about RISD was that I learned not how to just screen print in a sort of primitive way to make my own t-shirts, but to really screen print well technically, that allowed me to experiment with combining a lot of different aesthetics, you know, graphic design, illustration, photography, found imagery, and all of that synthesized through screen printing allowed me to also tinker with color, with making multiples that I could, you know, not be so precious about. It was very freeing. And I love the idea that art didn't have to be as precious as just one painting. Mm-hmm. And there were artists that used screen printing, like Barbara Kruger, like Andy Warhol, who I liked, like Keith Haring. But my idea really was that I was going to be more punk rock about it. I was going to use the medium in a more democratic way. And part of that was because I was terribly insecure about sharing anything I was doing with a, you know, an art gallery that might reject me. But also culturally, I just loved all the rebels, the miscreants, the disruptors. And I thought screen printing is perfect for that realm. I can screen print on paper. I can screen print stickers. I can screen print t-shirts. Screen printing is just going to be the key to everything I want to do.
There are two big questions here. Three big questions. The first is, the obvious big question, but I have to ask it anyway, is Andre the Giant meets John Carpenter.
So the summer after my freshman year at RISD, I was working at a skate shop getting paid $4.25 an hour, which was barely enough to survive on. So as part of my attempt to make a little more money, subsidize my income, I was making a lot of homemade t-shirts and always listening to a lot of music. I had gotten into hip hop a lot.
That was my second big question.
Okay.
When did you get into hip hop?
Yeah, I got into hip hop a lot when I was a freshman at RISD. Prior to that, I had liked Run DMC and the Beastie Boys, but when I was a freshman at RISD, I really got into Ice-T, Public Enemy, NWA, Boogie Down Productions, Eric B. and Rakim, Slick Rick, and LL Cool J. And when I was working at the skate shop, just by being the guy that ran the skate shop, I sort of became like the default like leader of the skate shop misfits. And there's always a lot of slang with skateboarders. So we were using the word posse a lot because it comes from hip hop. And one night a friend wanted to learn how to make a stencil. He was staying at my house. I didn't even own a television, so there's not much to do. And I was working on making a stencil because I would use the stencils to make homemade t-shirts that then I would take into the skate shop when my boss wasn't there and sell them and pocket all the money. So I said, why don't, let's look for something for you to make a stencil of in the newspaper. And I just flipped through the newspaper and there was an ad for wrestling with Andre the Giant. He said, I don't want to make a stencil of that. That's stupid. I said, what are you talking about, man? Andre's posse's taken over. It was just a spontaneous joke. And then he said, well, who's the posse? I said, it's you and me. And when people ask about it, we say, like, sorry, it's top secret. We can't tell you. And so he started trying to cut the stencil, got frustrated. I finished it and made these Andre the Giant Has a Posse stickers for our clique. And then people started asking me about them. And that made me think about how people decide in very arbitrary ways what they want to be aligned with, what the symbols of those alignments are. And this really dumb sticker became one of those things. And then later on, I saw the John Carpenter movie, They Live, and it uses the word obey really effectively in it. And I decided I was going to marry this silly Andre sticker with the word obey, but I was also going to simplify the Andre image to take it away from just a wrestling reference, because in the couple years that I'd been putting the stickers around as just kind of an inside joke with anybody that cared about subcultural Dada nonsense, I realized that there is something that's not totally silly about this. There's something profound about making people ask questions about who gets to control the visual narrative in public space, who's allowed to, and who's breaking the rules by doing it. And then I decided to do some research on some of the concepts that were popping into my mind, and I discovered Heidegger's theory of phenomenology, the idea that people have become numb to their surroundings and they need things to reawaken a sense of wonder and make them analyze with more detail and to be more discerning. So, these were all things that were sort of unfolding organically for me without me realizing that this was going to be a project that would last for decades. But I knew that I was, one, having fun being mischievous, and two, onto something that didn't require any gatekeepers to give their approval.
It's funny, when the pandemic happened, I went back and revisited all of because I had been a philosophy major in college, and I had actually wanted to go to Brown because it was the last school, I think, in the United States that had a degree in semiotics, which is sort of what you're talking about as well, like agitprop semiotics.
Yeah, absolutely.
And phenomenology, like Husserl and Heidegger, is such a fascinating philosophical school. But it's also really fascinating because for the thousands of years to preceding phenomenology, the idea was humans are disconnected from the objective world. And there's something wrong with us, that our experience, our sense perception is flawed, is wrong. And a subtext of what Husserl and Heidegger were talking about was saying, no, the subjective reaction actually has legitimacy. You can't conflate it with objectivity, but it still has its own meaning and power. And you can't just dismiss it. And so it's really like there's a few amazing books about phenomenology that I will have the decency not to share with you guys. But it's during the pandemic I was reacquainted with that. And I was like, what if it's really a fascinating early 20th century philosophical movement. And you mentioned Dadaism, and very quickly, similar to Idyllwild, people might not be that familiar with Dada. And Dada, I feel like, invented the 20th century. You know, like Fluxus to an extent is, I mean, not Fluxus, but Fauvism as well. But Dada, do you know much about the story of Dada?
I know a little.
I'm
thinking of a toilet.
Yeah, Marcel Duchamp's ready-made. Bagel. Yeah, you like Marcel Duchamp. But like, so Dada, Tristan Tzara, they invented this art movement. It's named after a hobby horse, a Swiss hobby horse called Dada. And I don't know how they were inspired by the futurists. Sorry, I'll keep this brief because I know we're interviewing you. But in my mind, it was the explosion that started art and music in the 20th century. Like,
well, I think when you look at how so many of our ways of understanding things are through not the thing, but a facsimile, Dada was acknowledging that. But the funny thing is that phenomenology talks about that too. Heidegger talks about the fact that a lot of people will say something that's shaped like a hammer and looks like a hammer is a hammer, but if it doesn't hammer in nails, then really it's not a hammer, and something else that would function as a hammer is more of a hammer than that, even if it doesn't look like a hammer.
Which dovetails back to what we talked about at the very beginning, the sort of the Mies van der Rohe idea of form versus function.
Yes, exactly.
You know, for how much a lot of punk rock takes the form of punk rock, but has nothing to do with the ideology of punk rock, whereas there's so many things that don't look like punk rock that actually embody the ethos of it.
Agreed. And so part of what I became fascinated by as an artist and with the concept of phenomenology was how many things do we accept at face value that if we really peel back the layers should be offensive. So what do we submit to? Obey. That was important to me because we're subconsciously obeying, following the path of least resistance, falling in line. But when we're confronted with the idea of obedience in a way that we're conscious of, I think it totally changes how we process everything. And so I like that idea of taking obedience out of the ether and turning it into a concrete thing to smack you in the face with.
Well, and also, so Lindsay, do you know, and I just had a realization about the John Carpenter movie, They Live. Do you know, if you've ever seen it? I don't expect so. No one has. It's this movie where like the earth is run by aliens essentially, and they have these hidden messages everywhere for them, but also for the humans. And you can only see them when you put on a pair of glasses. And so the lead actor, Rowdy Roddy Piper, this is my realization that it's Rowdy Roddy Piper was a wrestler and Andre the Giant was a wrestler. So like this odd synchronicity of like obey actually involving wrestling as well. So the Rowdy Roddy Piper discovers the glasses, puts it on, and sees that the world is populated by these awful aliens who have put subliminal, subversive messages everywhere to get the hordes of people to obey.
Whoa.
And they're so caught up in the rat race. This was during the 80s when, greed is good and Reagan. And John Carpenter was really offended by this rush towards defining yourself through what you consume, and also the me. Everything was selfish. The meanness of it all, meanness and the me-ness, and so
boy, that dovetails into something.
He was really critiquing that with the movie, but I didn't see it until the movie came out in, I think, 88, but I didn't see it until 92. But anyway, in the subliminal messages, one of the words among many, consume, sleep, marry and reproduce, watch television, was obey. But obey was the one that hit me the hardest.
So when I said just now, you said meanness and meanness. So I've also just described the bedrock foundation of my friendship with Shepard. Puns. Maybe we shouldn't even
Pun
get
Club?
We have alienated some of our friends.
You're in Pun Club?
I had a pun club. I actually had a pun club with Darren Murphy and a few other people, but that was years ago.
Yeah.
But we'll be on a text thread, and it gets deep.
They all tap out, except for Moby and me.
Yeah. So
that actually really checks
I won't
out.
subject you to it, but it goes very deep.
There was a whole musical theater pun string going on today. It's not always puns; it's often just wordplay. But anyway, yeah. But you know, you're a cunning linguist.
Yeah. Oh boy. Okay, so sorry for that cul-de-sac. I apologize because I know that no one likes puns.
I love your sack.
Yeah.
This is where it goes.
It's that. That's what it is.
Yeah. Okay. So getting back to and this also, just as an aside, and it involves a really strange story, is we had known each other for a while, and we both got invited to one of the weirdest things that people have ever been invited to. I've talked about it before. It's called Campfire. And it's organized by a young patron of the arts named Jeff Bezos. And this was before Jeff Bezos became, maybe even before he became probably a billionaire, but before he sort of
became the oligarch.
Yeah, before he became an oligarch, what he would do is he would round up his favorite artists, writers, musicians, thinkers, people, and it sounds so indulgent because it was, and he would send private planes around the world to pick them up and bring them to a camp in New Mexico. And then for like 4 or 5 days, people would just hang out and give presentations and go play in the woods and have actual campfires. But the year that I went, I haven't been invited back.
Were you there the same year?
Yeah.
We were there the same year.
We flew on the same plane with Werner Herzog and but so many weird people, like George R.R. Martin was there. The people who invented nanotechnology were there. Shirley MacLaine was there. Just on and on.
Neil Armstrong.
Yeah, Neil Armstrong gave the opening welcoming speech, and while he was speaking, a full moon rose behind him. And I was like, this is just too weird. Like, we're on the top of a mountain. I'm sitting next to Werner Herzog and Shepard, and we're watching Neil Armstrong speak, and the full moon has just risen behind him. For those who don't know, Neil Armstrong was the first man on the moon.
Yeah, no,
but they knew that was going to happen. They timed that. That was planned out. Did you find that out later? I mean, that was too much of a coincidence.
I like pretending it was just magic.
But the opening act to the moonrise with Neil Armstrong was Moby and Jeff Tweedy playing songs on acoustic guitar. It was
so I opened up for Neil Armstrong.
Totally amazing. Yeah.
But then the reason I mention this, apart from the fact that it was absurd and phenomenal, and I'm so sad that I haven't been invited back, was you gave a presentation, and I'm going to be sycophantic again, but it's my honest truth. It was the first time I became aware of the depth of your intellect and your knowledge of art history. Because like in the world of electronic music, there are a lot of people in electronic music who know nothing about music. They make great records, but they can't really talk about the history of electronic music. There are a lot of people in the world of street art who probably don't know much about Russian constructivism or phenomenology. And I remember you gave this presentation, and I was like, damn, Shepard's smart. Like, you actually, you hide it well. But it was it was really I was like, it made me see you in a very different light. Before that, I just thought you were Dumbo.
Well, Helen Stehler told me that you described me as feral, which I was. Helen
might have made stuff up. Who knows?
Yeah, but anyway, I hope I'm not outing Helen for saying that, but I take that as a compliment because I've been arrested 18 times. I was a wild in the streets kid. I was definitely feral, but they're not mutually exclusive, having a brain and being feral. And I think that art has that incredible dichotomy that allows it to be emotionally potent and can have those ingredients that make it intellectually potent as well. And so that was something that I was always hoping to achieve and explore, and some things are more successful than others. But I mean, you as a musician and a lyricist, you write really beautiful melodies and also really great lyrics. You know the deal.
Well, it's something, and maybe I'm being overly broad, but I've realized my favorite writers, my favorite artists, my favorite musicians are inspired by a sort of, like a generosity and a desire to share. The same way, like when you discover your favorite book or movie or record when you're 13 years old, you want to run to your friend's house and share it with them. And I know there's so many like obscure artists and musicians who feel very stingy. Like they're not being generous. They're not being welcome. And I've always been, even if I like what they're doing, I never want to spend that much time with it. And I feel like your approach to, we'll call it like informed populism, is really generous.
I've benefited so much from other people who had that spirit that for me, it's just the natural way of embodying what impacted me. If their sharing made me feel less alone, gave me some strength and some hope, then I want to see those characteristics in other people too. Mm-hmm. So it's not just generosity. It's also, if I'm playing devil's advocate, it's also very selfish in that a world of fearful, insecure, greedy people is not what I want. If I'm going to be happier around people who are generous, then that's something I've got to cultivate in myself and try to spread. And sometimes it can, I think when things are going wrong politically, like they are now, and all the strategies to get to the better part of people's humanity with my work seems to be failing. It can feel really like slamming my head against a brick wall day in and day out, but it doesn't demotivate me. The worst thing is to accept defeat from bad ideas and say, okay, fine, I'll just, go back to my corner and shut up now. I'm not going to do that.
Yeah,
I know you're not either.
Well, you remind me, we just had a guest on, Chris Cluey. Do you know Chris Cluey?
No, I don't.
So neither did I. But a couple months ago, to your point, like it felt like after Trump was elected, and I want to get back to like 1994, John Carpenter, et cetera. But a couple of months ago, Trump was elected, and we were talking about this earlier. It felt like everyone was acquiescing. Like the billionaires were on stage. Suddenly, Elon goes from like someone who believes that climate change is real and is making electric cars to wearing MAGA hats on. They're like, what happened? Like the press were all fawning over Trump. And I read this story about an NFL player who had gotten arrested in Orange County for protesting a community board, a city council
for Huntington Beach,
and they wanted to put a MAGA sign essentially on the front of the library, and he stood up and he protested, and he got dragged out of the protest, and he's
dragged out of the city council meeting. He's a former NFL player who's like this he got fired from the Minnesota Vikings for writing an essay promoting or in favor of same-sex marriage, and so that idea of like, yeah, you have to stand up. You have to fight the power. You have to stand up, even and especially when it's both inconvenient and difficult and challenging. Like that's like it's easy to go along with it when everyone's standing up, but like to that point, like when the zeitgeist is against you, that's when you have to resist the most.
Yeah, agreed. It's definitely heavy right now. But we can get back to that. I mean, and I'm sure you've had a lot of people talking about any number of the problems that we're dealing with, and it's so the mountain of things is so huge. I don't even really know where to start. But I do know that art that gets people to see themselves and others and be vulnerable for a second makes a huge difference. Mm-hmm. So that's one of the things I'm going to stick with.
Yeah, appealing to like what is the expression? The angels of people's better nature.
Yeah.
But I do, because I know that you have been so political in your work. But I want to go back to how we got there, because I know there's a lot of of artists that are always trying to find ways to use their voice in the work that they're doing. So we're back, it's 1994, and you've created this phenomenology moment of Andre the Giant and the John Carpenter Obey. So then what happens from there?
Well, for a few years, I was a little insecure about talking about anything topical in the news cycle because I didn't feel like I had enough expertise. So I could talk about big picture issues. And I had a small clothing brand called Alternate Graphics, AG, same initials as Andre the Giant. And I was making things that I had a Stop Racism shirt. I had a shirt that was two guns, a positive image and a negative image. So like the black and white inversion of each other pointed at each other, and it just said weak underneath. And this was during kind of the peak of the celebration of guns and gangster rap. And I thought that was really ridiculous. And what else? I had a Question Authority shirt, but really with the Obey and Andre the Giant stuff, mostly it was just the mystery of it, getting people to say, what is that? And then hopefully that creating a chain reaction of what's all this other stuff I'm also being inundated with. And I love the idea when I started to embrace the Russian constructivist style, that it was a really strong graphic style, but it had a very sinister connotation for Americans because of the Cold War, McCarthyism, Red Scare, all of that. And I liked the idea of this inversion, that something that was in a sinister package was actually benevolent, while advertising, the biggest form of U.S. propaganda, was often packaged in a really friendly way to make it feel like, hey, this is America. This is part of your DNA. Don't be afraid of this. Mm-hmm. And so this contrast, it was a conceptual thing, but it wasn't topical about one issue or another. I dealt with some topical things in other parts of my work. But then in 2000, when Bush was elected, I thought, okay, maybe I need to stand up and be a little bit more outspoken, because this seems like a bad direction for the country. And then especially when the Iraq war started, I made lots of posters and a lot of art that were against the Iraq war, against the Patriot Act, against favoring military spending over education, things like that. But it was an evolution through my mid-20s into my early 30s to feel like I was educated enough about a lot of these issues to speak out. And one of the things, as I got to where I was paying closer and closer attention and reading a lot more, I was reading a lot of people from Bobby Seale from the Black Panthers to Noam Chomsky, Naomi Klein, was realizing that a lot of these politicians, they either don't even know that much, or they're not being honest, and they've crafted talking points that they know will manipulate people despite what they know. And I thought all of my reservations about speaking out were really silly, because this is not, we're not playing a game that's about expertise here, where it's about about a power and persuasion battle, and you can use your tools within that battle for good or for bad. And there are a lot of people using them for bad.
Yeah, it's these moments of like, this is a theme of these moments of empowerment, these moments of realizing, like, oh, if you can ride a skateboard, so can I. If you can speak out on whatever bullshit you're speaking out about, I can speak out for something that I genuinely like. All of these moments of, if someone can make this, I can also make this.
Yep. And the sort, I mean, like, I know that you were inspired by, well, many of us were, like, by Marshall McLuhan. And so this idea that, like, propaganda isn't the problem, it's the application of propaganda that's the problem. It's the disingenuous use of propaganda that's the problem. Like, because a lot of people are distrustful about the imagery, but the imagery's super powerful. Like, there's a reason why it's so well crafted and so effective, but why not what you've done and what a lot of other great artists have done is like use it for good.
Yeah, propaganda has a very negative connotation, but I think there's plenty of positive propaganda. And I think the way I make a distinction between typical propaganda and mine is that typical propaganda is meant to be the end of discussion. It's to say, this is the way you need to think and be, where what I'm trying to do is create a counter narrative saying, maybe there's space for another way of looking at this issue, and let this be the thing that creates that conversation.
That's a great point. I had never really thought of that. Like, yeah, that like actual totalitarian imagery and propaganda shuts down discussion and shuts down questioning.
Yes.
Whereas artistic propaganda is the beginning of the question.
Yeah, and of course, I always called my work in my sort of propaganda campaign that was structured like a branding campaign in a lot of ways. I called it Obey Propaganda because if you're really direct about what you're doing, no one can accuse you of being underhanded and manipulative. So that was my way of acknowledging that, yeah, hey, I have a point of view and an agenda with what I'm doing. At most of what you're subjected to does, so it could all be considered propaganda, but I'm going to be honest about it with you.
When you are your voice is getting louder, you're standing up, you're making this art, like this is becoming a real way of life for you. Did you experience backlash?
Yeah, it's backlash, I think, is something that everybody's going to experience once they stick their neck out and have an opinion. And it's fascinating coming from skateboard culture, punk rock culture, street art and graffiti culture, all very outsider things, that you're doing what you do, trying to connect with people, trying to have some integrity, some authenticity. And people say, that's great, right on, man, you're one of us. And then the moment it catches on beyond your subcultural group, then people say, you must have made a deal with the devil. You must be a sellout. You must not be one of us anymore. And that's a really fascinating thing to watch. It's not always fun to be part of it. I know you've had that, Moby. Yeah. The amount of Schadenfreude you had to endure, it horrified me. And initially I thought, he must be a jerk because no one would be treating him like this if he wasn't a jerk. And then I met you and was like...
And you're like, he is a jerk.
No, he's...
But I don't mind it.
You're unique. But anyway, backlash, I think, is inevitable if you do something that people notice. And so, but what's the alternative? Just don't make sure you're not noticed. And for me, it's never been about me thinking I'm great. I have enough self-confidence to pursue what I care about, what I believe in. And I know that in a world of mediocrity and laziness that I should at least, with the amount of effort I put into stuff, deserve a shot at connecting with people. But it's not pure narcissism. I think everybody that's creative has a little bit of narcissism. But for me, it really is about this idea of empowerment and creating a template and creating community. We have a gallery, Subliminal Projects, has been around for over 20 years. That it's about giving people a space to show their artwork. We've had a lot of music in there, a lot of activist events, zine making, all the DIY stuff that helped me become who I am. I'm trying to provide that for others. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, for everything that, is could look like ambition, it's not purely to make money or to or to achieve acclaim. A lot of it is to develop an ecosystem that has the values I believe in. And you can't do that unless you've you've built up some resources and a voice.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I read an article a while ago about the band U2. And I've known the guys in U2 for a long time. Bono is one of the most charitable, generous people on the planet. And he's routinely crucified and criticized, and I'm like, so if Bono had stayed home and just gotten drunk all the time, he would be celebrated. So it's like, it is the paradox of the moment you use your voice to speak up about things that are important, even the people who agree with you are going to push back. It's very, very, it's a strange phenomenon. I don't want to get, as I mentioned before, I don't want to get into any conflict stuff because I just don't, for me, it's the least interesting part of your career is the conflicts you've had. Your art and your intellect and your creativity, like those are the fascinating parts.
It's also like the man in the arena. If you are the one sticking your neck out, there will be people that are going to have their opinions about you. It's just going to happen.
My high school punk rock band, we even wrote a song about it called 7-Inch Sellout. Because basically in the punk rock world, if you did anything other than play 2 shows, you were a sellout. It's like, man, why are you giving out flyers for your show? You sell out. Like, you're charging $2 for a show. You fucking sold out. So it's as old. As long as someone's been doing something and someone else has been paying attention, they're going to get criticized for it.
Yeah, and I don't love that aspect of it, but I can take a deep breath and realize how incredibly lucky I am to get to use my creativity to not only make a living, but to connect with people who are like-minded and who I've admired. I've gotten to collaborate with so many different visual artists and musicians that have enriched my life with what they do that, I feel really, really fortunate.
Yeah. So we're getting to basically, and I almost don't want to talk about it, because it's kind of like it'd be like, let me think, what's an example? Interviewing Nirvana, like the remaining members of Nirvana, and like leading up to Nevermind. Meaning we're getting to like the massive zeitgeist moment of the Obama Hope poster. Do we even want if I didn't know you, I'd want to hear about that, right?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like for the uninitiated, it might be nice to give just a little tagline of your experience.
Is that something you hate talking about?
Do you hate talking about it?
No, I don't hate talking about it. Everyone asks about it. And I was thinking about it today, actually, because our younger daughter is 17, and I created that poster the week before she was born. So it's always... her age always lets me know how long that poster's been around. And I know that when I was 17, something that happened the week before I was born, I wouldn't have cared at all about. So, when I was 17 in 1987, did I care about who was playing on the radio in 1970? Later I did, because Black Sabbath Paranoid came out that year. But anyway, but
written by the original vegan. Geezer.
Yeah, Geezer, exactly.
Geezer Butler from Black Sabbath. He wrote the songs.
He was the original vegan?
Been vegan since the late 60s.
Good for him.
Really good guy, too.
Yeah, so sweet.
He wrote all the lyrics for Black Sabbath except Fairies Wear Boots, which Ozzy wrote, but and wasn't about me, believe it or not. I have worn boots before, but the Hope poster was a crazy phenomenon I never could have expected. And a lot of people saw it at the time as a really strange path to take for me, who'd been making a lot of work that was very anti the Iraq War, anti-Bush. And I just done an art show called E Pluribus Venom, where the presidential seal was a buzzard instead of an eagle.
It's also a pun. I'm not surprised.
Yeah, that's right. And yet one of the reasons I had mostly critiqued mainstream politics was during my lifetime, other than maybe Jimmy Carter, who I was too young to really appreciate, there hadn't been somebody who was in mainstream politics that, I saw as sort of heroic and somebody that I identified with until Barack Obama. And Barack Obama having enough of a charisma, of a speaking style, a communication style that I thought was just off the charts, incredible. And also talking about things I cared about, like universal health care, the environment, the shrinking middle class. It made me really want to lean in and support him. And I'd realized that if you're punk rock cool and you just hate everything and you're critical of everything, you're not really contributing to a solution, to an alternative. And so I guess it was a little bit of maturity that led me to want to make that poster for Obama. And all I saw was, okay, what's the problem that needs to be solved? The guy has been a state senator. He's made some impressive speeches, including the DNC in 2004 that impressed me, but he's also half black. What would support him? And I thought, well, something that made him feel like he was legitimate, like a two-dimensional statue that was patriotic, that was deracialized, that gave him, presented him as a visionary. And, all of those things were just sort of intuitive things. It wasn't like I broke it down. What are the ingredients that I need to put into this? But I thought, I'm going to make a poster, and if it connects with my small audience, then that makes a small difference, and that's something I can do.
I mean, I remember the first time I saw it, what struck me, because I'd known your work pretty well up until that point, was the vulnerability, and that it was earnest. Like, it was so reductive, from a compositional perspective. Like, there are only two elements really going on there, but it just had this. It was the most interest, going back to what we were talking about, propaganda. It was vulnerable. It was propaganda, but it had a gentleness to it. Mm.
Yeah, it was incredibly straightforward and sincere, which was unlike a lot of what I was doing, which was a little loud and angry and very aggressively stylized. Mm-hmm. And but I thought, okay, within American politics, there's such a narrow space for visuals. How can I be adjacent to what that is, so that it's not too far out to just be rejected, but that it's different enough, because Obama is different enough, was my opinion at the time. So I think that the combination of a lot of goodwill towards Obama, people being intrigued by that image, my audience being somewhat receptive to my point of view and to my methodology, that I was out there putting those posters around, and there was like, this is the grassroots upstart campaign. There was a little bit of David and Goliath to it that I think people responded to. And then it was also the early stages of social media where things could go viral. You had Facebook, and I put a free download of the image up, a PDF that could be scaled to any size, printed out, and it just went wild. Like, look at where Kanye West is now. Kanye West put out on his blog that he had on the time and was celebrating it, and then the next thing there's it's everywhere on all these other blogs that people from hip hop are doing, and watching how quickly it took off, it was a beautiful moment. In that, to me, it was everything that mattered to me, that mainstream politics didn't just have to be controlled by deep-pocketed insiders, that there could be a belief from people that the system could be better. You know, a lot of the things that were being embraced were so encouraging to me. Now, of course, there were a lot of people saying, once it got popular, oh, Shepard Fairey did this just to jump on the Obama bandwagon or to make money. Of course, when I made it, everyone was saying to me, why would you bother doing that? The Clinton juggernaut's going to crush that guy. Like, first primary's done. But then, of course, like after he built some momentum and succeeded, then it was, oh, well, I somehow knew that all along, and that was my scheme to get rich. So, but yeah, these are just natural things that happen with anything, I guess. People are, you know, they're going to say what they're going to say. But that moment was, it was like the perfect storm of so many things that I cared about coming together. And all I felt about the piece of art was that it was a decent enough piece of graphic design to do what I wanted it to do. But I had plenty of other work that I thought was maybe stronger visually, or took more risks, and yet that piece functioned the way it was supposed to function.
Yeah. That when you were talking just then, it did make me a little bit sad. Also, there's a really fun story. The first time we DJ'd was in DC. We've DJ'd together a bunch of times. And the first time, I believe, was after Obama was elected, Inauguration weekend in DC. We had a Move On, Shepard Fairey, Moby, etc. celebration party, and Obama tried to get there and couldn't. Do you remember that? Like his motorcade couldn't get to the party because it was all too crowded.
Whoa.
Yeah, it was a really cool party. Michael Stipe was there. I met him for the first time. You already knew him.
Olivia Wilde dancing on stage.
Yeah, that was quite cool. And Rosario Dawson and De La Soul played.
Yep.
Cool.
But what made me sad when you were talking, you mentioned Kanye. And I was thinking, like, imagine, but in 2007, 2008, like Kanye was like kind of an inspiring hip hop producer, you know?
Yeah.
And I just thought, like, imagine, it's horrible to think about it. Imagine if someone from the future had come back to us in 2008 and said, okay, this failed reality TV show host, Donald Trump, who everyone knows is a complete idiot, is going to be the twice elected president of the United States. Kanye, this sort of inspiring hip hop producer, is going to become a right-wing anti-Semitic lunatic. RFK, who we think at the time he was running Riverkeeper, like punishing corporations for polluting, is going to become a QAnon conspiracy theorist lunatic. Elon Musk, who has just started the first great electric car company, is going to become a right-wing racist dimwit. Tulsi Gabbard, who was a vegan first-term member of the House of Representatives, is going to become also right-wing Fox News lunatic. It's like, just what happened to all of these people? Like, how did they all go so wrong?
Well, my theory is that they're driven by narcissism, not principles. And Russell Brand, too, who was a very good friend and somebody who was incredibly generous to our kids, our family, had many, many spiritual ideas and political ideas I agreed with, but a narcissist. And when you don't get the results you want from the people that you initially connect with, that they are a fickle, sometimes difficult crowd to please. I know that very well. I know you do too. If you're an insane narcissist, then you go to the people that are easier to manipulate. They're easier to suck power from. Donald Trump was a Democrat. He gave money to Hillary Clinton's Senate campaign.
He was a pro-choice.
He was a pro-choice Democrat.
But he just went where the attention was.
I mean, Elon didn't like to be told that he had to adhere to COVID protocols. The story I've heard with RFK, who's also somebody I've known for a while, I supported Riverkeeper. Once he had decided, based on a woman he really empathized with, that vaccines created problems, autism for kids, which, it's been debunked like crazy, that the fact that he was then criticized for holding that opinion, he decided to keep doubling down, and the pandemic was the time when he could do it and get the results he wanted. And so, it's all these are all,
it's narcissism.
Opportunism.
Right. Yeah.
It's opportunism fueled by narcissism.
Yes.
And, unfortunately, culturally, we haven't made the ceiling for that lower. And I just finished reading Yuval Noah Harari's Nexus, the guy that wrote 21 Lessons for the 21st Century and Sapiens. And he breaks it down really well why social media algorithms are allowing these people to thrive, because controversy is one of the things that drives engagement, and engagement is what the algorithms are designed to generate. So, a lot of it is not that humans haven't had these traits for a long time, but they haven't been rewarded at the scale or as easily as they are now.
And as immediately. Yeah.
Yeah. It's instantly.
What was the movie?
And to get paid for it, because then you get all these followers, and then suddenly you get
that's
money.
Yeah, to that point, and I don't want to name names, we have a friendly acquaintance whose career hadn't been working out the way they wanted it to. I'm not even going to say their gender. And they were basically paid by the right-wing Illuminati to start spouting right-wing propaganda. And it's the only money they had was coming in because they're being paid. They're getting these huge paychecks from right-wing billionaires to basically go on social media and use their platforms to spout right-wing nonsense.
It can be very lucrative, these things.
I'm just saying, if things don't work out for you and I, we should just go and
Well, what's the saying? They say man, but I would say person. It's hard to get a person to understand something that their job depends on them not understanding. A lot of people, they will pretend to think one way if that's how they're going to make a living. And then I think that our survival psychology is pretty strong to the point where we start believing our own lies to justify something that allows us to survive.
Oh, absolutely. It's basically, it's like, sorry to interrupt, but it's almost like our brains have a switch, and it's like, if complicated truths don't make us feel good, we go for the simple falsehood that rewards us and binds us to a tribal community.
Which is exactly why conspiracy theories are so popular.
Yeah.
Harari breaks that down really well in Sapiens, that humans are capable of cooperating in groups larger than 50 because of shared mythology. But the mythology was historically vetted over long periods of time with a lot of trial and error. And now conspiracy theories can catch on instantly because of the way that social media works. So, this mythology that's helped us in many ways, that psychology that allows us to latch on to mythology also allows us to latch on to really bad mythology in the form of conspiracy theories. So, the technology is moving faster than we can socially adapt, really, is what's going on. And I just keep clinging to the idea that art with a generous human spirit can make a difference. I don't know whether it's true or not.
Yeah, I was going to ask, because I feel like we've kept you for a very long time here, Shepard. But I'm thinking of, and I mentioned this before, of these, I think a lot of young artists, whatever their medium, feel feel very disempowered at the moment. Feel like what can they do? What can I do? Because, you know, with social media, things are there for a second and then gone. And so what do you say to the disempowered artist?
I think that it's very difficult if you've grown up in the era of validation through likes to untangle yourself from that psychology. But chasing the dopamine of, you know, posting and getting likes and having people respond, this is a very fast turnaround thing that I think makes it difficult to create art that will endure. And when I say endure, I don't necessarily mean it, you know, it's going to be like the cave paintings at Lascaux that people reference as like, wow, look, this is one of the first symbols of you know, humans becoming more civilized and representing things through symbols. But at least something that's going to last longer than 15 minutes. And I also think it's incredibly anxiety inducing to be trying to get a reaction, you know, every short term through the mediums we're using. So what I would say is take a deep breath. Think about what you might want to spend some time developing that will not be a response to something that's a meme from 15 minutes ago, but something that's part of the human condition that was going to last longer than that. And I know that for my own kids who are 17 and 19, that that was difficult for them as teenagers, but they finally got fed up and they now only ingest social media stuff for a little while and they do a lot of other things. And ultimately, I think that we're not wired for this kind of frenzy. We're in a frenzy culturally. So I feel lucky that I was starting to draw purely, you know, analog and doing all these things, and then got access to digital tools, access to social media. I'm very frustrated by the nature of social media, that I say something that I think is very decent and decency is punished by the algorithm. You get no play. It goes out to like 4% of my followers, my average post. So until I can find an outlet that is better, which I'll definitely use, I'm going to use that as a portion of how I connect with an audience, but I'm still doing huge murals that are in a city that can capture somebody's imagination when they happen to just be walking or driving by. I think that looking beyond the digital realm to connect with an audience is going to be really important for anybody who wants to be successful, not just for the sake of making things that people respond to in the real world, but also for how the medium of whatever you're doing, having it cater to what someone would want to experience in real space changes how you work. You know, we were talking about McLuhan earlier, the medium is the message. When a screen, video, or JPEG is the only way you are sharing and consuming, then I think it's somewhat of a shallow junk food style, short-lived experience. And that's one of the reasons I collect art, I collect books, I collect records. Having those physical things, even though I listen to Spotify, there's something very reassuring about the physicality of those things. And
tangible world.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess what I would say to anyone, this is so long, I apologize, is make things for people that you love and trust. Make things for the real world. And if the feedback from people you love and trust, and then your own instincts are all positive, then don't worry about what the response is when you put it out digitally, because so much of what people in the short term react to is variables created by someone else, not created by you. And those variables are going to be shifting every 30 seconds. But what you made might actually stick with the person till after they've gotten past their insecurity about what's trendy in that moment. And it's going to stick with them. But you have to have the patience as a creator to let that process take place.
Yeah. To let go of the instant gratification and have that inner gratification of I made something that came from someplace real inside of me.
Yeah, it's very important that you not base everything you're doing on the instant feedback of others, positive or negative.
It's sort of ish, maybe in my mind, it dovetails into one thing I really wanted to bring up, which is going back to that campfire weekend. When you did your presentation, in addition to becoming aware of the fact that you were real smart and knew art history and cultural history incredibly well, one thing that really struck me was how, it sounds like I'm being sycophantic, but I'm just being honest, how beautiful your work was. Because up until that point, I had mainly associated, like I'd been in Providence when I'd seen the Andre the Giant stickers going up with my girlfriend, and I was like, that's interesting. What's that? And I'd seen your work as being a form of like, almost like Fluxus agitprop. Like it was this like punk rock, like in your face, very message driven, with a very playful aggression to it. But when we were in New Mexico and you showed your work, and I sort of stepped back and I was like, oh, it's beautiful. And I'm just wondering, are you ever tempted to almost just sort of like have a period in your creative personal life where you just let yourself fully indulge in beauty, where it's no longer like there's almost no messaging behind it at all? It's just the creation of beauty. And if the answer is no, that's great. I was really so impressed with the actual aesthetics of the work and the beauty of the work.
Thanks. I have incorporated more and more of that into my work in the last 10, 15 years. One thing is that initially I thought that it was always important to snap people out of a waking trance, you know, a little slap across the face, agitate them. But then I also later realized that seduction is very important as well. And, you know, the how you get through people's prejudices and defenses is, I think, beauty and humor frequently. And so I think that I've tried to employ those things more. And there have been some works that I do, like mandalas and some landscapes, that are really just about harmony and beauty. And I think that those things, they feel joyful, they feel soothing. I love choosing chaos here and there, but I think when we're in chaos that we don't choose, it's so unnerving. But when you step outside on a beautiful day, you know, go to the beach or look at a view from a mountain, there's something about the peace of natural beauty that says, this is healthy, this is right, I feel okay, things are going to be okay. I want those elements to be in some of my work, even though there are many, many, many things that are not okay right now. But unless we can remind people that this is what we should be aspiring to be in symbiosis with, then I think there's going to be this miscalibration of things.
Yeah, I feel like as a musician, and maybe it's just the way I approach it, I've gotten lucky because On one hand, I can write quiet, beautiful classical music or music that I think is quiet and beautiful. And on the other hand, write punk rock songs. And people are more accepting of it. Like in the world of art, I can't think of too many people apart from you who give themselves the freedom to both, to create sort of like challenging, issue-oriented art while also creating beauty. Because I have about 20 or 30 of your screen prints in my house. And you're right, most of them are from the last 15 years. And you see this evolution of beauty, and in a way, especially now, like beauty can, especially if it's not trite beauty or Hallmark beauty, it can be its own form of activism because it reaches people. And you're right, it does, like messaging and issues are very important, but refuge is important, and reminding people of sort of like utopian beauty, I think is profound.
Yeah. And what I often try to do so that I don't lose all my street cred is I have something very beautiful and then some element that is threatening it. And maybe there's some piece that's got a really beautiful scene, but then in the distance there's an oil derrick, so there's trouble in paradise. And I always hope that there's going to be a range of people viewing my work, that some people, some of the messages might be missed, but the feeling is something that they connect with. And it's a spectrum that I'm approaching my work with a whole bunch of different, techniques for trying to connect my ideas to people. But ultimately, I find so much therapy in just making work that I think is beautiful or at least well resolved graphically and powerful, that I get this dichotomy with what I do that is so powerful, and I'm so grateful for, that I get to escape while I make something that ultimately I'm going to share, that addresses issues that I think are crucial, crisis issues, yet it was a purely joyful therapeutic process in trying to create that image that then, okay, now it's going out, in the battlefield of our world to try to do its hopefully good work, but I get to escape, and then I get to engage. And if I have a healthy rhythm with that, it's ultimately totally sustainable.
I mean, David Lynch once said something, I'm paraphrasing. He said, like, I'm filled with joy and light when I create darkness.
Yeah, David Lynch has so many great quotes. Great. I know how much of a fan you are, and so am I. But I think he had to meditate, because without meditation, that darker side would have really eaten away at him.
Yeah.
And so I think he understood that dark and light better than most.
Mm-hmm. We should let you go soon. Lindsay, what do you want to talk about?
I feel like we are in a very dark and scary time. And I feel like, if anything, having you here is a great reminder of the power of art in difficult times. Are there ways that people can express their feelings about the world that you think are genuinely therapeutic? Like when you're putting that stuff out there, obviously there's social media, but are there ways that people can like engage with their art in their communities that I would never consider? I mean, just because you've been doing this for such a long time, I know you've done stickers, you've done murals, you've done all of this stuff. Like, how can people interact with the tactile world using their art?
Well, because the hands-off protests were this weekend, seeing a lot of the signs, like all the creativity, the good creativity is on our side.
One of my favorites was, this season of White POTUS sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's so much clever copywriting. At the Women's March in 2017, the first one, one of my favorites was.
Where we also DJ'd together.
Yeah, that was really fun.
And you let me play Fight the Power.
Which I wanted to play, but you brought it up, and I was like, okay, I'm going to give him this one. I got Get Up, Stand Up, and Rebel Girl. So, and these boots are made for walking. But
all really good.
But Trump, when it was debatable whether his hair was real or not, it was him holding his hair in place in the wind and saying there will be hell to pay.
Oh, that's really good.
See, this is the criteria for judging a pun. Like, it's 48% like true appreciation and 52% deep discomfort. like wow, oh, I hate it so much, but I love it. I love it.
I love it.
Yeah, it's all about timing too. But I think the Women's March the day before the inauguration was pretty good time. Or was it the day after or the day before?
I can't. All I remember was it was super crowded.
Yeah,
beyond that I don't. And sometime in January,
it might have been the day after, but either it was good. It was good timing for all that. Seeing the creativity, the signs, and everything, and the just the joyful resistance of the first Women's March. That was the first time I felt not sick to my stomach after Trump was elected the first time. This time is worse, but one of the things that I do think is important to keep in mind if you're creative is that keeping up with the blitzkrieg of bad ideas from MAGA that's not going to be how ultimately cultural shift takes place in the right way, because this is playing the game on their terms, which I think is why we are where we are. The terms have shifted into, like, it's Napoleon, don't go out into the middle of the field or whatever. We've been walking into all the traps that MAGA has set. And I think that being kind and creative and making things that are about shaping the long-term vision for our politics and our culture are really important. That doesn't mean that we don't have to be realistic about short-term goals, and we've got the midterms coming up. But yeah, I really think making things that celebrate all the values, diversity, equity, inclusion. I've got a piece about that coming out soon enough. But also, it doesn't have to be, some people aren't comfortable making things that are overtly political because, like I felt in my mid to late 20s, they might feel like they aren't experts, but making things that are about accepting the dignity of other human beings and sharing, just making something and having the vulnerability to share it, that's shifting things in a better direction. So I think we've had enough snark, even though I love a little bit of it here and there. I know you do too.
Especially when you make fun of our friend Gary.
But I just think that creating fearlessly is essential right now, and sharing it not just through social media, but having an art show in a cafe, going to see a band, supporting people by showing up, not just by liking and commenting, is really important.
Yep, I think that's really, really valuable now.
So we need to let you go because we've had you here for a long time and you have a life and a family and a home. Can I end? If you notice, I've been very restrained and have not tried to steer us down the rabbit hole of top fives.
Oh, yeah. You only did one. And I know you had many you wanted to do.
Okay, can we do a lightning round top five followed by a more thoughtful top five?
Yes.
Okay, lightning round top five favorite hip hop songs.
Bring the Noise, Public Enemy, Children's Story, Slick Rick, Power, Ice-T, Made You Look, Nas.
This is number 1.
99 Problems, Jay-Z. But that wasn't in order. Reverse the order.
Okay.
And I'm surprised. Okay, BDP, Big Boogie Down Productions.
Love's Gonna Get You.
Okay. Because KRS-One, who was half of Boogie Down Productions, who then became just KRS-One, was also one of the first vegetarian rappers.
Cute.
Okay, so now...
Because that's mutilation, self-murder.
Yeah. He had a verse about not eating in My Philosophy. My Philosophy? Was that the song?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Pork or hamburger. Yep. Yep.
So, okay, so now the more thoughtful one that I thought might be a nice thing to end on. 5 favorite protest songs.
All right, I'll go from 5 to 1 on that. Hurricane, Bob Dylan.
Yep.
Rebel Girl, Bikini Kill. God Save the Queen, Sex Pistols. Get Up, Stand Up, Bob Marley. Fight the Power, Public Enemy.
Really good. Yours is probably very similar.
Very similar. The one that I would add, which is it's easy to forget about because it's quite old, would be Strange Fruit by Billie Holiday.
Yeah, and that's always on protest song lists, and it's that is an important song, but that wasn't part of my teenage or 20-something years. I didn't discover that song until later, so that's why it kind of doesn't make it. Also, do you know Barbara Dane and the Chambers Brothers? It Isn't Nice. You should listen to that song.
I mean, I know Change is going to come. That's that's Sam Cooke.
That's Sam Cooke. Yeah,
okay.
But Naomi Klein was actually sorry to name drop, but was the one who pointed me in the direction of Barbara Dane and the Chambers Brothers. It Isn't Nice, but it's a really beautiful folk soul hybrid protest song. There's so many good. Ohio.
Neil Young, yeah.
By Neil Young, yeah. Or Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, but yeah.
Mercy, Mercy Me by Marvin Gaye.
Yeah.
This is now just going to sit here for the next 3 hours and just go back and forth with protest songs.
There's so many amazing ones. We could probably do an entire episode on our favorite protest songs.
I'd throw Rise Above in there.
Yeah, No, You're Right. It's by The Clash. Not one of their best songs, but I love the lyrics because it's like, these are your rights, all 3 of them. Mm-hmm. So, this awareness of what you should aspire to and then what the limitations they've attempted to set for you are. It's really brilliant. Joe Strummer was brilliant.
Yeah, there's and this is, I don't want to keep you here too long, but one of the most interesting, you sort of have alluded to this, is one of the most odd, interesting, humbling, wonderful parts about being a public figure artist or musician is you get to meet and become friends with and work with your heroes. And I know that we've met and worked with so many of our heroes, but I got to be, were you friends with Joe Strummer?
No, I never got to meet Joe Strummer, but I did send him a package of posters and he sent a nice reply back, but it's one of my biggest regrets. So
I met him. I just want to tell this one quick story. I met him at Glastonbury one year and we became friends and he was so lovely. Like he just hung out backstage, hang out by the campfire. And the last time I saw him right before he died was such a beautiful moment. It was at that bar in the Standard Hotel on Sunset. What's it? It's like Smoke and Mirrors, maybe it's called. And I went there after hours. I was very drunk and I walked in and he was there and the DJ started playing a Donna Summer song and Joe and I hugged each other and jumped up and down and danced all sweaty to Donna Summer together.
Wow, that's incredible.
That sounds so fun.
Yeah.
Every single person I know who knew him said that he was exactly what you would hope for.
Yeah.
And that's really beautiful and inspiring, and makes me want to try harder.
Thank you so much for coming over and
Giving us so much of your time. Thank you.
There's all this other stuff that I'm sure the moment you leave, I'll be like, oh, we forgot to talk about.
But we covered so much, and I feel very inspired by this conversation. I hope that people listening feel the same way.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah, we hardly even talked about street art. We didn't talk about Banksy at all. But,
well, that's my last question. Who is Banksy?
I really shouldn't tell you who Banksy is, but they are.
So Bagel is still wearing her space alien octopus costume, or it's resting on her.
It's a bit more of like a blanket at this point.
If it was attached to her, I would feel really guilty laughing because she doesn't like costumes very much. But
she seems so cozy.
Yeah. Aw.
It's really cute.
Okay.
Anyway, that was an awesome conversation with Shepard. What a nice person. I feel like you guys got to go down some rabbit holes that I couldn't even begin to peer into, but I'm really glad you got to do that. I'm glad you had the space for it.
Yeah, we didn't really give as much time and space to the pun text thread that we have.
No, but there's always, we could even just do an entire pun episode where we could have all
it goes deep.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we will we'll say goodbye.
Great. See you soon. Thanks for being here. And also thanks to Jonathan Nesvadba, who edits, and thanks to Erin, who records the video, and thanks to Day, who is on our team and just the best. And thanks to Human Content, and thanks to you, Moby, and thanks to Octobagel.
And thanks to Bagel, and thanks to whomever made this space alien octopus. Okay.
Bye.
Bye.